Thank you for listening to my talk today. I think Q will be really proud that I'm dressed as the purple dancing emoji, so yeah, thanks. Cool. So, today I wanted to talk to you about the unavoidable complexity that we face in our industry. So I'm going to set the scene. It's a Monday morning, and you're in the kickoff meeting for a brand new cloud product. Make sure I get this right. Finance walks through the door. So finance wears a hat that is constantly thinking of the bottom line. How is this product or project going to make us money? Is it going to fly with the CFO upstairs? Now, I want everyone to give a round of applause for finance. Yeah, there we go. Next through the door is engineer. So they wear a hat that is full of a vast knowledge of how things work. Can we build this with the system and tools that we have? Is this doable? Will it work? So round of applause for engineer. Next up is leader. So leader wears a hat that is constantly thinking about their team and the constraints that sit around what they're going to be working on. Is this project going to burn out my team? Do we have enough of the right people? Can we do this in the time that we have? So round of applause for leader. And then there's you, the designer. So give yourselves a round of applause, because come on, we're all designers, yeah. So you wear a hat that you try your best not to be yours, but someone else's. So you represent a diverse group of humans that will ultimately interact with what you design. And it's your job to remind people of this. You get it, but will they? How are you going to communicate your ideas? There we go. So these blobs represent many others you may have worked with, some you may have not have met yet, and some might even be lurking in the corporate shadows. Leader kicks off the meeting with timelines, scopes, and then opens the floor to questions. Then engineer jumps in with what at first you think is another language, but soon realize that they are acronyms. Then finance jumps in with ROIs. Now, I don't know about you, but at this point in the meeting, I start to do this fake smile, and I write down these notes that make no sense. So I like to visualize this feeling as complex vines growing around myself. And soon you can't see anyone. Now, when there are multiple complex vines, I like to call this being lost in the forest of complexity. Now, when you're in this forest of complexity, it's dark, it's cold, you're alone, and you can't find the exit. How is your customer meant to find the exit or understand this product if you can't find your way out? Once you do somehow find the exit, you find a safe space. So maybe a beanbag, like the ones just outside with your computer. You start to see the other blobs filing out of the room, laughing and joking after being in that meeting. How can they possibly be laughing and joking after being in that complex forest? Maybe they know what cloud actually means. So you Google what is cloud. And what comes up are more acronyms and more diagrams. So then you just seek for a new job, because surely only the engineer blob can navigate this environment. So before we go down that path, let's take another look at what things created that forest of complexity. So as blobs, we tend to complicate things. So think about what you're wearing today in this room or online at home. In essence, we wear clothes to keep sheltered from the elements, like our friend kind of on the left. Could have been different, but... So we distinguish ourselves by adding complexity to simple things. So we add logos, textures, artwork, chains. So if we can complicate something as basic as our clothes, when blobs are confronted by something that they only partly understand, the likelihood is that they will add bling to something they don't understand to make it theirs. And at this point, the project becomes victim to complexity bias. Complexity bias is when something simple becomes suddenly complicated, and the risk is that the passion for it fades because it's now in the too hard basket. Why? To save energy. So biases, as most of us know, are mental shortcuts we use to preserve energy. They help us maintain our sense that we are still in control. The French have a saying that often resonates with me a lot in the business-to-business space. Why do something simply when you can make it as complicated as possible? Which is why the engineer blob was speaking in acronyms and finance was talking in ROIs. We sometimes opt towards the more complex side of things, as we know deep down the answer will become unclear and inconclusive over a simple approach that will require more energy, as this will get us to the solution faster. So, going back into that room, imagine two things happening. Firstly, the blob's own hat's complexity and complexity bias for those vines to really start growing. Now, these vines aren't only growing all around you, they're growing around each blob, meaning that you, A, can't communicate with them, and B, they can't communicate with you either. And the truth is, if you're lost in that forest of complexity in that room, then every single blob will be as well. And even though they see you in the corner on your MacBook smiling, even though you will see them leaving that meeting smiling, they will see you in the corner on your MacBook smiling away while you're actually on Seek looking for another job. So think of how detrimental this is to the project or product being kicked off. How are you meant to create this product together if you can't communicate with each other? And how is your customer meant to understand it if your team can't? Now, if we think of an output this work might consist of, which is not planned, but perfectly a service design blueprint from what we were hearing about before. So a service design blueprint is basically an extension to a customer journey map. And this extension captures what the organization does for this customer's journey to be true. So it's what a customer can't see. And what's typical is that every single blob in that room are itching at the bit to start defining what that layer looks like. Why would they want to start defining what the layer looks like that customers can't see, where it's obvious to start at the top? Understanding who might be using the product, or why they might be using it, or what they need to do to get where they need to go as smoothly as possible. Complexity bias. So they're opting to take the more complex side to save energy. So you could design a perfect system that is absolutely useless to the customer. I'm sure we've all had experience in teamwork, either professionally or in sport, where the team is more effective than the sum of its parts. But equally, I'm sure we've all had experiences that can be frustrating, because despite all of the individual talent, it cannot link up. It becomes far more ineffective than what it is in theory. I'm sure you can think of some great examples where really awesome teams fail on paper. I want you to take a moment to think about the last interaction that you worked on for your customer or user or whatever form that you use to design things. And now I want you to think about how many different blobs this had to go through in order for your customer to experience this. So as designers, we must navigate very complicated organizations. And within each organization, we have to speak to multiple blobs. And for each blob, we have to speak their language and understand what they need in order to influence them, to tell them why they need to add a back button to their product. When I started in this industry, I was the specialist designer in a squad or team of about 6 people working on a product called HSNS. We were tasked with understanding what it might take for customers to move on to a more modern solution that better suited their needs. And as you can tell by the old name, it was a legacy product and needs had since changed. So as the meeting was going off in a foreign language with acronyms, diagrams, and my absolute favourite, networking maps, I was awakened by a, "What do you think, Ella? You're the expert on this for customers." And as we've talked about it today, that imposter syndrome sweat was forming, and I could feel my sheep's clothing unravelling in front of them to reveal that I thought my new job was going to be about mobile and broadband, not enterprise networking products. So I did what I was always taught at design school. I asked the question, what is HSNS, and why would a customer need it or use it, or why? Silence. So I soon realized that the team appreciated the question, but couldn't answer it. Soon my forest of complexity broke down in front of me, and I zipped up that sheep's clothing to get underway with answering the question. As it turns out, HSNS stood for High Speed Network Services, which is basically copper and fibre that is for business customers where ultra-fast broadband isn't available. Simple, right? What I learned from that experience was every individual has their own part to play when it comes to providing solutions or products for our customers. And it's our job to keep them thinking up there in the land of simplicity instead of down below where things are complex and complexity lurks ready to kill a project. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that complexity doesn't exist. It definitely does, and we're all going to encounter it or do on a daily basis. But just let it naturally flow as you work through the project or product. Don't start down where customers can't see. So what if you had a little tool in that forest of complexity that you could whip out in front of your team to slash those complex vines early and bring them back to that land of simplicity? So I'm introducing a new tool in a nutshell. And I'm going to teach you how to use it in any situation, no matter how big or small your team is. I called this tool a nutshell as it's simple, compact, and fits into your hypothetical pocket. The expression in a nutshell goes back to Roman times in 77 AD, where a writer called Pliny described Homer's Iliad being written in such tiny handwriting that it could fit into a nutshell. So it means to compress mainly spoken or written words. And when we think about that room, there were multiple words being thrown around by multiple blobs in different languages. So what we want to do here is A, condense those words down, B, translate it back to a common language, and C, flip it back to the people who will be using it. So here's the formula in a nutshell that I want you to write down, take a photo of, or screenshot at home so that you can use it when you next feel complexity creeping in. So the formula is, in a nutshell, the product or topic name, then is, then simply enter what the product or topic is in a few words. That, then what the product or topic does, for, and then the key customer, user, and why. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to give you an example of a bad nutshell that was explained to me. So this is for a cloud product that I was working on when I first started in this industry. So CMN is an SD-WAN Layer 1, Layer 2 product that connects VLAN, Wi-Fi, and, I've already said VLAN, in a network through management SLAs in a front-end GUI. So, yeah, that was about, I think, my third week in, and yeah, that was fun. So if we think about that bad nutshell, it makes sense to possibly one blob in the room, and instantly those complex walls have been built. So assumptions are baked in that people actually know what SD-WAN is, or VLAN. I still don't to this day, because that's what, the engineer should be worried about. We should be worried about why someone should be needing that. So you set yourselves up to, start from that very bottom layer I showed you earlier, far away from that land of simplicity. So here's a better example of a nutshell for the same product. So in a nutshell, Cloud Managed Networks is a connectivity product that connects to the cloud for businesses looking for a modern, cost-effective network that's managed for them. So it's all as well writing one for yourself, but the key here is to write one as a team. And it's not easy to align on something as a team, especially kind of form, in a spoken, open conversation that could honestly take you an hour. So I'm going to walk you through how to do it in a very quick exercise. So I like to use nutshells, ideally at the beginning of a project, or when you see the word project, it could be product or anything that you're working on, ideally at the beginning. But otherwise, it just could be mid-meeting, mid-project, or when you just generally feel complexity creeping in. Because if you're feeling that complexity, then there's no doubt someone else in the room will be as well. You'll need at least 3 or more role types. So this is really important. It kind of makes the whole nutshell a bit more diverse in the perspectives. It'll make sense to more people if it's from 3 or more people. You'll need a way to capture text. So this could be how you collaborate. So it could be whiteboards, Miro, FigJam, in the chat that you use. And my absolute personal favorite is Microsoft Paint. So you'll need something to easily agree on. So this could be a voting system, thumbs up in the chat, anything you use to agree on something as a team. Now, the key to success of this tool is buy-in. So a blob wearing a more technical hat might find you whipping out this nutshell tool a little bit abstract and fluffy. So you could term words such as, hey, I've got this tool. You don't even have to call it a nutshell. I've got this tool that we can use. It'll bring everyone back on the same page, keep things simple, and it will only take 5 minutes. The first step for this tool is to simply just show the team the formula and outline that what you're trying to do as a team is fill in those gaps from 1 to 4. So in those kind of highlighted brackets, 1 to 4, you're trying to basically align what those are as a team. The second step is, depending on how you collaborate, on a wall, whiteboard, whatever you use, just simply as yourself, if you're facilitating this, just write 1 to 4 or the words itself, the brackets, and get your team individually to brainstorm against those 4 prompts in 3-minute blocks. So if someone comes up with too many ideas, just get them to pick their top 3 and stick it up on the wall, if that's digital or in person, and just get them to simply stick them up there. The third step is to have every individual dot vote on the bracket on what they think best fits that certain prompt. So it depends on how big your team is. It could be 3 dot votes or more, depending on how many people there are. Now, it's really important to do this silently, as I'm sure we've all come across some really loud voices in the room that overpower others' decisions. So keep things silent, people can read through them, and then just dot vote on the top one that they think best suits that bracket. So at the end of this exercise, your nutshell will look something similar to this. And it's not going to be perfect, so it might not even make perfect sense. But remember, the key you're trying to do here is bring your team out of that forest of complexity and into that land of simplicity. So having them simply just brainstorm against those 4 prompts is going to do that. Another good thing about this tool is, as a designer, you can tap into things that have come out from your team brainstorming against this. So if your team can't actually describe who it's for, then should you even be working on this? Or if your team can't describe what it does, then it definitely needs some more work. So overall, after completing this exercise, you should feel your team slightly calmer, no more fake smiles present, and your forest looking more like this. So to round things up for you, in a nutshell, this simple 3-step tool is a secret weapon that brings teams back to the land of simplicity for teams lost in the forest of complexity that I hope you can use in that complex world of ours. Thank you.